Hello everyone. Today we're going to look at starting an array. So the first thing to note about arrays store multiple items of the same data type. So we're going to look at a string array. It's the most intuitive, and this will apply to all types of arrays, integer arrays, and other various data types. So for a graphical example, we're gonna make this from an array. We're gonna populate the list box from an array. The way we do that, the first thing I'm gonna do is clear this list box here. We have a list box shape, that's the name of the list box, and we're just gonna clear it. So you can imagine this at 0. So let's say I wanted to populate this list box with an array. First thing we do is define our array. So to define our array, first we need to give it the data type that's going to be in our array, and then we do the open and close square brackets. That's how the compiler knows that we are building an array. Next, we're going to give it a name. Shape array, because these are shapes, so I'm naming it shape array. Then we use the keyword new, and this is how we tell the compiler what we're trying to build. We're trying to build a new string array. One important detail about arrays, the array creation must have an array size or an array initializer. So it wants one of two things here. Either we tell it the size of the array ahead of time, we must know the size of the array, or we give it the values. So in this case, we'll say we have an array of size 3. We could also just give it the values. So if I were to give it the values, we would use these squiggle brackets, and then I'd put the values that I want in there. So I could put circle, and now we're a string array, so we have to put any value needs to be put in double quotes, and any new value needs to be separated by a comma. So circle, square, and triangle. So this is one very simple way to build our array and have it pre-populated with the values that we would want. And then we could just individually add each value. We could read the shape array and add each value to the list box. That's one way to build the array. We'll call this array initialized. Initialized with values. And let's comment that out, and let's build another type of array without the values initialized. Without values. So remember, we need to give it the size of the array. So we're going to build an array of size 3. Now, to read each segment of the array, so you can think of it as a basket with 3 eggs. That's more or less how I like to think of what these data structures are. An array data structure is a basket that carries a bunch of different types of items. So I like to use the analogy basket of eggs, but there's plenty of different ways to conceptualize it. So if I wanted to read the first value of the array, we used, or in this case, if I wanted to write to the first value of the array, we used the name of the array, square brackets, 0. Arrays use zero-based indexing, which means the first value is 0, the second value is 1, the third value is 2, so on. This comes in handy later, and you'll see why it's zero-based, but this is something to just get familiar with and memorize up front. 0 is the first value. And in this case, it would be circle. So that we've built this right here. If we assume that it just stopped, it's stopped right here, and then we had the squiggle end bracket and the the semicolon there. Now I would do the same thing, and here it would be square, and then triangle. So this is two different ways to build the same array. One where I've just initialized the size, and one where I've initialized everything in the array. You can change values of the array at a later point. Oh, typo here, that should be a 2. Now I want to point out one really important nuance here. If I try to change the value of something that's too big for the array, let's take a look at what happens here. I'm going to run the code. And this is our add button. And we get an error. We're getting an error on this line of code here because our array is not big enough for this value. So this is a very common error. Index was outside the bounds of the array. This is going to appear very frequently when you're learning arrays, which is you're trying to read values outside of the size of the array. So that's what this error is. So if we commented this out, the add button does nothing other than just clear the list box right now. But you'll see that we didn't get an error this time. So we were able to build this array and take these values. Now let's add them to the list box. So we have something that removes the list box. Just a little comment there. Let's do list box shape items add. Now we can take these values that we used up here and throw them into the array. Value 1, value 2. And this should populate our list box from the array, which means it's just going to be empty. So there's two things happening there. It cleared and then it added these. So let's just clear. We don't need to see the code. All the clear button is doing is this. And now let's add. And we see that we added the values here from shape array. So this is a very simple way to use an array. The power of arrays will come in very apparent when we start looping through an array, and then you're not individually writing each value of the array. The code will look very clean. You'll have a loop that just increments this number, and the code will look very precise. But what you're seeing here is you're seeing this value circle being put into the list box here, like so, from the shape array. So now we have this array, this big basket with 3 eggs in it. Each egg is a string. You have a circle, a square, and a triangle, and you can pull them out. They're in a specific order, and you can pull them out at any time. And that's an array. That's a very simple demonstration of using an array and reading from an array, saving to an array. Keep in mind what that error is, trying to read outside the array. It's a very common one. And you can initialize an array up front. So this is a quick introduction to arrays, and we'll get into how to really use them. This is one of the most powerful tools in our toolkit of programming. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching. Take care.